Welcome back to another episode of the Yellowhammer Sports Podcast. I am your host, CJ Duncan. It is so glad to have you all back. I know it's a busy holiday season right now, and we're jumping back and forth from family and friends, and also trying to keep up with this crazy college football season. But we're going to take a brief break in between our talks about the college football playoff system and meet with our guests. We're going to talk with our guest today, a very special guest. This guy's a trustful native, Sanford University grad, also played on the football team there at Sanford University, former managing partner of the Birmingham Steel Dogs. He's a founder of the nonprofit Team Inc., which provides athletic opportunities for at-risk youth. He also does several things in the community. He is very engaged and deeply rooted in this Birmingham community. The resume goes on. And now he's now the executive director of the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, Scott Myers. Scott, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, CJ, great to see you and to be with you this morning. I was really looking forward to talking about the CFP playoffs. I'm surprised we're talking about something else.
Well, you know what? We want to hear a lot about you, but we will get to the college football playoff at some point. I feel like at this point in my life, in this part of the year, football comes up in one way or another. So we'll definitely get to that. But let's jump right in. You
Sure.
all at the Sports Hall of Fame, Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, just named the next class of Hall of Famers for the state of Alabama. You've got Mark Ingram, Jason Duffner, Frank Warren, Mike Mitchell, Roberta Baumgartner, Keith Butler, Otis Davis. Uh, what can you say about this class? I see where you got folks that played here in the state, but folks who didn't play in the state but are from the state. What are your thoughts about this year's class?
So one of the things that differentiate and why that transpires is there's two ways you can be selected for induction. First is just birthright. So if you're born in the state of Alabama and you move away at a young age, like many families do, you're still eligible to be inducted. The second is if you were born in a different state, like for example, Mark Ingram was born in New Jersey and but he played at Alabama and he brought recognition to himself and to the state of Alabama through his play while he was at Alabama. So that's the other criteria. So you'll see a lot of times you'll see people and you're like, well, I had no idea he was from Alabama. Well, he may not have been. He may have either played at Alabama or Auburn or been born here, like Mia Hamm. Mia
Mhm.
Hamm's one of our inductees for over 20 years now, and she was born in Selma and lived here apparently till she was 18 months old, and then moved away and was mostly in North Carolina. But and then of course everybody knows the story with Joe Namath, who was from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, and came to Alabama, played a little football for Coach Bryant, and through his years, he's brought a lot of recognition to our state and through his career. So that's how the criteria works. That's why you'll see some of that. Some of them are unique. Our board, excuse me, our board sometimes has to make a decision whether the tie to the state is strong enough. And there's been some discussions on different inductees through the years. I've been here 15 years and as the executive director, and it's a great process. And we've got another great class. This class of 2025 is you got a lot of different sports represented. Number one, number two, you've got a just a great group of individuals, and quite frankly, several inductees that have been on the ballot for a number of years, and they're just now getting to where they made the cut and made the ballot. And then we've got one or two on there that it might have been the first time that they've been on the ballot, and their resume convinced the statewide selection committee to choose them.
You know what? I'm sure winning Alabama a national championship against the Texas Longhorns probably gets you in pretty quick, I would assume.
Well, definitely when you put the Heisman Trophy with it, it's kind of a
Yeah,
no-brainer.
absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, there's so many special people that are a part of the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. Just for someone like myself that is just naive to the system or the process, I hear you have a board. Do any of the former inductees have a say-so in who's next to be inducted? How does that work?
Well, that's a great question. So we do have a board. It's a 14-member board that's appointed by the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker of the House, and then whoever is the chairman of the BJCC, which is where our museum is located, which we'd love to have everybody. 3 floors, 33,000 square feet, right on the corner, over 6,000 items of memorabilia. It's an unbelievable museum. But we have 14 board members, and then we have 81 voters, selection committee members all across the state, with every congressional district represented equally. So they all have, it's not all the people from Birmingham selecting all these people for Birmingham every year. So that's how that process works. Some of those members of the selection committee that are appointed are inductees.
Mhm.
So an inductee can serve and can have a say so, as you mentioned, in who gets selected for induction. And through the years, we've had people roll off the selection committee and roll on that were inductees. But it's a great process. I consider myself a caretaker. There were a lot of men before me. My predecessor was Coach Bill Legg, who was here for 23 years and did just an amazing job. Retired at 82. He liked
Wow.
it so much he stayed a minute.
Yeah.
But and then of course the board chairman years ago was a guy named Larry Striplin, and then his following him was Edgar Weldon, who was our board chairman for 21 years. Just an amazing job, and all he did to bring this Hall of Fame to, they all take it to the next level, essentially. And now Zeke Smith,
Mhm.
former executive vice president at the Alabama Power Company. He's been on our board for several years. He was selected as the new board chairman just recently.
Yes, good friend of mine. I think he will do excellent in that role. So it sounds based on what you're telling me. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine at this point. But let's take it back to 2009. I guess it was when you first started this job. Do you remember your feelings during that first going through the process for the first time of having to, you know, evaluate all these people that were on your list to be inducted?
So yeah, the first thing I remember when I was even offered the job, I was 41 or 42 at the time, um, and I was like, I just was getting through with the Still Dogs. I'd love that. Thought we were gonna eventually, move the Still Dogs into the AFL. We were gonna have a good money thing, and then we just couldn't figure that out. So I just wasn't sure that I was ready to get out of team sports. Most of what I'd done up to that point had been sports relative to a team. And I was like, I don't know really a whole lot about running a museum, but it's been great. It's been an amazing opportunity for me. This is a wonderful place. Again, the museum portion I'm a caretaker of, and of course we oversee, in partnership with the Alabama High School Athletic Association, we oversee the Bryant Jordan Scholarship Program. So that's one of the programs. It's going to be our 40th banquet this next year, and that partnership has been in place since day one. The High School Athletic Association, Bubba Scott at that time, with again my predecessor, Coach Legg, started that scholarship program, and it's an amazing program. Annually, we'll give out about $1 million in scholarships every year to graduating seniors all across the state. It's equal representation from 1A to 7A, same number of kids. Every high school in the state can only nominate 2 kids. You can't apply for the scholarship. You have to be nominated by your high school principal. But that program we run here, and so that's added a lot of joy through the past 15 years to me, to be able to run that program and to manage that program internally here. And then we have an inner city program as well that works with the Birmingham City Public Schools, that's called BAP, or Birmingham Athletic Partnership. And that's been something now that it's in its 22nd year. Our board chairman, Edgar Weldon, founded that. In fact, I was a board member of BAP before I became the executive director of the Hall of Fame. But that's housed here in the Hall of Fame too. We give space there, and it's a great thing. So that's a long answer to it's been a really enjoyable work. I love coming to work every day. I get to meet a lot of new people, like such as yourself, to talk ball
Yeah.
and then the funnest thing I get to do was just this past really month, the way our process is put together. The voting process happens in October, and then our board ratifies it at the quarterly board meeting in November. And then I get to call the inductees, the
Mhm.
next class, and say, "Hey, just I'm Scott Myers. Sometimes our board chairman at the time, Edgar, for years, and Zeke will hop on the call with me, and we'll get to tell people they've been selected for induction into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame."
Yeah, that's great. And I don't want to skim over this part. I want to dive a little deeper. You talk about BAP and you talk about the Bryant Jordan Student Athlete Scholarship Foundation, and you also are founder of Team Inc. as well, that also is investing in the kids. Sports has played such a huge role in your life. And so I want to ask you, what is something that you believe sports gives kids, as far as the development of a child or the structure? What is it about sports and young men that you believe could lead to success? Because clearly you have invested a lot of time and effort into that space.
Well, there's just, I mean, there's a number of different things. I mean, just the things, and when you were saying that were going through my mind. Number one, overcoming adversity, resilience. Um, you've got teamwork. You've got just ability to fight, to come together as a group, working with others. There's so many different things, particularly in team sports, that bring that out. Now, obviously, tennis, golf, some of those more individual sports, you still have adversity, you still have resilience, still have fight, all the life lessons you're learning, and you don't really realize you're learning them.
Yeah.
And I know for me, um, my parents divorced when I was 12, and my dad wasn't around a lot, and so coaches really poured into my life and were really second father figures to me. A lot of them through the years, and I look back and the role some of them played, and it's just really remarkable how God used that at that time in my life to keep moving me to where He had me to go and for what I was able to do. So it's a way that I saw happen in my life, so that was something that I wanted to pour out and to be able to do in others' lives. And it's been a great opportunity to do that with BAP here recently. And of course, it goes to, there are a ton of dads. You don't have to have an entity, obviously. There's dads that I coached with through the years when my kids were coming up.
Mhm.
And you're pouring out to not only your kids when you're coaching a team, you're pouring out into these other kids.
Yeah.
And I always had a personal thing for me. The ones that I the ones that I would get onto the most, the ones that I would push the most, are the ones that I saw the best opportunities in, that I saw that needed somebody to give them encouragement and pushing, so I took responsibility in that, and I've seen other dads through the years just do an excellent job of coaching those kids and pouring their lives into kids. And even there's some guys that I coached with that when their kids were done, we coached with their kid, but they came back and helped me coach my son, and they didn't have a kid on the team, and they
Mhm.
were just pouring into these other kids. And there's a lot of dads and men and women. You see ladies and moms and doing this all the time too. So it's just a way to athletics in general. And again, well, BAP, we help band, choir, and cheerleading as well. And so it's just extracurricular activities. It's giving young men, and particularly when you talk about BAP or team and some of those things, giving them an outlet to have something to do as opposed to just going home and studying, or
Yeah.
which is important,
Mhm.
but giving them something to do, letting them use their energy and their desires and to learn other things and to do other things. And I'm sure your life, you've got story of how you were a collegiate athlete, you played at that highest level that very few people play at, and you know what it meant to you.
Oh, absolutely. I think about it today. I was actually having a conversation with someone recently, you know, uh, at a young age, like at my age now, I think about, my younger days. I don't necessarily remember all of the birthdays that I had, but I do remember, a play call or a moment that I had with my dad when I was on that Pee Wee field, playing ball. I remember how close me and my friends were at that time, and that adversity. Like when you go through adversity with folks, it doesn't create a better bond, really. I mean, that bond will last for a very long time. I'm still friends with a lot of those guys to this day. So it is. I think it's pivotal for kids to be able to do both. Like you said, the classwork, the schoolwork matters, but also having some type of outlet to deal with emotions and to also build a lot of character is pivotal in a child's life. So I think it's absolutely wonderful that the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame is doing that, but also you're doing it personally and continuing to do that. So we'll get back to it. Right out of college, you decide to take a job and just travel the world. Can you tell our audience about your time globetrotting and how your love for travel and sports brought a football team to Birmingham?
So yeah, not. I was very, very blessed to have had the opportunity right out of college. Again, I went to Sanford,
Hmm.
go Sanford Bulldogs. And I loved Sanford. It was a blessing for me and loved having that opportunity. But out of college, I got a job. I was at 22. I was the vice president of international sales at Amerex Corporation. And CJ, the way that you get that job is that you grow up with the grandson of the owners. And I just had to be a little better, or to somewhere, I had to be, able to do some things, and it was great. It was a great opportunity for me, and it is what, really, that family, the Payne family and the LeMaster family, and I say their name now in memory. One of my closest friends just passed away recently, and so
Sorry
we're
to hear that.
we're getting at that age now that we're losing some friends with cancer and different things. But yeah, so my first job was in international sales, and I traveled throughout the Far East, and my territory was Latin America. So it pushed me to learn Spanish, and took me a little while, but I finally got there and lived overseas for a year. It kind of moved me in that direction, and yeah, it was great. And I love travel to this day outside of athletics and sports. It's my passion, the thing that I love the most. And I've been afforded the opportunity now. I think I'm at 64 countries or somewhere around there, which has been
Wow.
great. Just been blessed.
Yeah.
I tell my wife, I don't golf, I don't fish, I don't hunt, so I'm not going on those trips. I'm not away from the home. I very rarely miss any kid event. Period.
Mhm.
Uh, that's kind of my thing. So my wife allows me to, with a couple of friends, to go to. Hey, we're gonna go knock out, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and
Mhm.
she has no desire to go to those places. So I'm able to. I'm not going to Greece or Ireland or Italy or any of those places without her. I can assure you.
Wow, that's great. And so you, because of your travel and your time in these different countries, you like you said, you were in sales, but then you kind of get back to the team sport thing, and you're doing marketing, and you're doing kind of front office stuff as well. Tell us a little bit about that transition between sales and then getting back into team sports and how you had the passion to want to bring it back here to the state of Alabama.
Well, there were two when I was at Amerex. There were two books that I read that kind of moved me to. When I was at Sanford, I got into sales because I figured that's how to. Didn't grow up with any money, needed to be able to make some money. So I said, well, I'll get into sales, and that's what I studied, marketing, and but I read a couple of books. One was called what they don't. The name of the book was What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School.
Mm.
Um, and that book basically was by a guy named Mark McCormick, who started the sports agency business. And he had four golfers back in the 60s: Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, and Jack Nicholson.
Mhm.
Jack Nicklaus. The three big that they were his. He started that industry back in the 60s. And I'm like, well, I can get in sports and combine sports and business. So that was how kind of it started. Then there was, um, Bo Knows was another book talking
Mhm.
about Bo Jackson and all the
Yeah.
marketing and the, Bo shoes and all of that about that. And so those two books pushed me to go into athletics. And the first job I saw where the owner of the Birmingham Fire was going to be having a reception and meet and greet with people at Highlands in a restaurant in downtown Birmingham. I said, well, I'm gonna go tell him, I'm gonna go meet him and introduce him and tell him I want to work for him. And his name was Gavin Maloof. And Gavin at the time was 35 years old. I was or 30, 34, 35, and I was 24, 25, somewhere at that time. And so he was 10 years older than me. I went in there and I met him and I said, "Hey, I want to work in sports. I want to work for you." And he was like, "Well, okay, come on." And he
Yeah.
basically said, come, let me meet with you next week." And I met with him next week. And then that was my first job in sports, doing marketing for the Birmingham Fire and the World League of American Football. So,
Wow.
which is also how I met board chairman Edgar Weldon,
Hmm.
who now 20 years later, essentially from that, was the one that said, "Hey, I'd like for you to come over and run the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame." So, but between there and then, I was the GM of a hockey team with Art
Hmm.
Clarkson and the Birmingham Bulls, and then me and a friend who had played for the Birmingham Fire while I was doing marketing, we were at a away game and we saw an arena football game, and we both looked at each other and said, "Man, this would be great in Birmingham. This would go crazy." So um, fast forward a few years, he was in sales and sold a pharmaceutical company and made a little money. He said, "Hey, let's take over the Birmingham team that just came here last year. I'd like to buy it. The guy's selling it." So that's how that happened, and so we had a football team and had it. We owned it 6 years, and it was great. It was great, but we couldn't figure out a way to make money, and the league was going down, so
Yeah.
had to do something else.
Well, I mean that's a phenomenal story. Did you know when you were at Sanford playing ball, did you know you wanted to be a sports exec one day? I mean, I know kind of my dream at one point of my life was, hey, if football doesn't work, it'd be really cool to be a general manager for, an NFL team, with Carolina Panthers or wherever, somewhere down in the South, be a general manager. I think it's one of the coolest things you can do. How did this come about, and what was your thought process at a younger age about this?
Well, it's funny you say that about the GM. My son, who's graduating senior this year from Homewood, there are only 32 GM spots, right? Well,
Hmm.
32 NFL GM spots. Now,
Right.
with what's happening in college football, there's going to be a lot more GM spots.
Sure. Yeah.
And but his first passion he always wanted, he was going to be a GM because he's on Xbox and putting all these teams together and doing
Yeah.
all this stuff, and so that was, and he still is in the back of his mind maybe somewhere, and he wants to coach, so he's figuring all that out. But for me, I didn't think about that. I didn't, that was before the boom in coaching that made coaches made that much money and everything. So
Right.
again, I was going into sales. So it wasn't until I realized kind of post college that, hey, I can take my passion for athletics and be in sports, and so that's how I turned it into my vocation. And then you got to make some decisions along the way as well. One of the decisions I made was that I wanted to raise my family in Birmingham.
Mhm.
Well, that knocked out a whole lot of sports jobs
Yeah.
and the opportunity to leave. In fact, when the Birmingham Fire folded again, I was there for 2 years, and I guess I was 26 when it folded. And Gavin was like, "Hey, won't you come work for me at the bank in Albuquerque, New Mexico? And we're going to do it. We're going to buy another team somewhere, and then you can go there and help us run that team." And I'm like, "No, I'm going to stay in
Yeah.
Birmingham.
Yeah.
I'm not going to leave." So that's again, that was a decision that led to that. And but now with the sports marketing programs that are in schools, in fact, Sanford has one of the top sports marketing programs in the country.
Hmm.
So I'm having interns here from Sanford all the time, and we take interns from all over. Sanford students do get a high preference here, as does anybody from Trustful.
Right.
Uh, I'm teasing, um, but yeah, the programs that are out there now to educate young men and women in the athletic opportunities to combine athletics with business are there. So it's for me again. It's been something that's been a real blessing in my life. I've been very fortunate to be able to do what I've done and been able to be a part of. So it's been great.
Yeah. You spoke about your son briefly there. You are a football dad through and through. It's been a part of your life, like we've said before, for a long, long time. How's it been being the quarterback's dad and watching your son play ball?
Well, I mean, it's been amazing in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. It's been difficult in others. When
Mhm.
you see your son get a little injury and it ends up
Mhm.
nagging him for the last 4 games of his high school career. That was tough on him and tough on his dad.
Mhm.
But it's just so much honor to see him fight and for years, his goal was to do that and to see how hard he worked all the way through the years and all the hours that he put in, not at the, normal practices and everything, but all the additional work that he put in. Just, there's a lot of just tons of blessings from there too. I'm very proud of him. He's a good kid. He makes good decisions. He loves the Lord. He's just he's a good young man. All my children, I'm really blessed that my own kids, in addition to those kids that I adopted through the years, that I still,
Right.
that still call me coach. That's probably one of the most, things that I take the most just joy in, is that I still have kids and his teammates that still call me dad, or not call me dad, call me coach, because I
Mhm.
just coached them from when they were first grade through sixth grade, and then I, handed my kids and I handed all those other kids off to the different coaches at the middle school, and I hadn't coached them since, but they still call me coach. So that's a fun, that's very fun and an honor for me.
Well, I'll tell you from our perspective, the player to the coach. I had a wedding recently, and I thanked my parents and my dad specifically for that exact thing. I think once you get older and you look at things in hindsight and you see, man, there was a lot of sacrifice that went into not only having your 9 to 5 or having your job or doing what you had to do to keep the bills on, but you also are sacrificing a lot of time and effort into pouring into somebody else's future. And so we thank you, and I'm sure your son feels very proud to be a part of everything that you've got going on, and that you're his dad. So I think it's great that you've poured into so many kids, including your own.
That's
So
thank you for
yeah.
that. And that's, there, what's going on now with college football. This recruiting class is just tough for these kids. And there's, again, I know where my son goes to high school. I know Homewood obviously a lot better than, but I know it's happening at all the other schools too. Other than the 4 and the 5-star kids are, they're going to be fine. But it's a lot of the other kids that are looking for opportunities. And it's a lot easier for me to call on behalf of those other kids that I coach than I know than it is to call for my son, which is, we all want to help all these kids get to different places. So
Sure.
it's
Yeah,
tough. What these
it's a
kids are
very
going through now
tough.
is tough.
It's a very tough era that we're in, especially for high school kids. Because these coaches, they're having to manage not only high school recruiting but also the portal too, and with the expectation to win immediately as a coach, there's so much pressure to win now that a lot of these coaches are choosing older, more experienced guys over the high school guys, and by the time they get through their portal season, there's only a handful of scholarships left for the high school guys.
Yeah.
And so it has made it kind of the Wild Wild West in a sense of trying to play at the next level to achieve those dreams of playing post high school ball. And a good example of how crazy it's gotten and how it's become almost the minor league of the NFL is, Coach Bill Belichick over in North Carolina. First thing he said was he's going to have a general manager that's going to have to, manage basically high school and portal recruiting, and he's going to have folks, underneath him that are specific to college and specific to high school. It's just a crazy world that we live in.
It is, and it's, and the biggest problem right now is it's not the transfer portal and the NIL coming at the same time was a
Mhm.
complete disaster, and
Yeah.
nobody was ready for it. The NCAA wasn't ready for it. The SEC, nobody was ready for it.
Mhm.
So that disaster hitting at the same time. But the biggest problem now is the NCAA lawsuit that's
Mhm.
being settled, and whether the settlement's going to be accepted. It's knocking the roster numbers down from 125 or whatever to potentially 105.
Wow.
But nothing, well, I said potentially there because nothing has been decided yet. They
Mhm.
still don't know, no school in the country, any level, knows exactly, well, except for the D3 where they don't give athletic scholarships, but all the big schools, the FBS, and I think the FCS, quite frankly, the D1s, they don't know how many scholarships they're going to be able, or not scholarships, well, scholarships and roster limits. They don't know the exact number yet. They're basically all guessing at this time until that lawsuit settled sometime in the spring. And that's the other deal. They don't know exactly when that lawsuit's going to be settled.
Yeah.
So all the coaches at the college level, the high school level, they're all like, well, I don't know what I'm dealing with. This is potentially what we're going to be dealing with. So they're all moving to what they potentially think it's going to be because that's where they've got to move to.
And,
And
and
it's
how do you
crazy.
feel? How do you feel settled as a player too? Because once they do settle it, if it is in the spring, do these coaches have to go back and cut guys because of the roster situation? I mean, then you really are an NFL in that sense. If you get to come on and then they get to cut you too at the same time.
Well, I mean, it's there's going to be some of that happens. I mean, some
Hmm.
schools. My brother lives in California. He knew had some relationships with UCLA. I think UCLA let every one of their walk-ons go. It
Wow.
was if I could be getting the school wrong, but I don't think I am. And so they let all their walk-ons go. So that's 40 kids that
Mm.
they. I mean, I don't know how many were graduating and those other things. But they up now. Some of them they said that you maybe can come back depending on the coaching situation and
Hmm.
what transpires there. But it is it's like the NFL, but the NFL at least has guardrails.
Right. Exactly.
They've got a salary cap that's agreed upon with the NFLPA and the owners. They've got roster limitations. They all that they're all known knowns, right? You know
Right.
everything
Sure.
at the college level now. There's so many unknowns that they're just having to, you know, make it up as they go along, basically.
Well,
At
and
the,
I think you bring up a really good point about the walk-on situation. I think um, having a walk-on system is very important to any program. One, giving these kids opportunities who may have gotten overlooked, but also you need the bodies, you need the numbers. At least in the NFL, you have practice squad guys that can help you get through a practice. The NFL doesn't hardly practice that much anymore, but at the college level, you're wanting to get solid looks. You wanting to get looks, guys with energy, guys that want to be there, that have a passion for the school. You want to get those looks during the week so you're ready for Saturday. I wonder if you see the level of play kind of come down without having legitimate practices or folks getting hurt at practice because there's no walk-on guys or on the
Great
team
question.
anymore.
It's a great thought. I think that may be an outcome that unintended outcome that transpires through all this transition time.
Wow.
And there's a lot of talk. Coach Sweeney, Kirby Smart. Some of those coaches have really talked about. Well, and of course, Coach Smart was a walk on at Georgia
Hmm.
and ended up being a scholarship player and playing.
Hmm.
Uh, but the walk on system has been a tremendous thing for college athletics
Yeah.
for many years,
Hmm.
and it has the importance of it has not been really identified or felt because it was just part of college football.
Just what you did.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's just what happened. And having that kind of go away now, there's based upon what everybody's kind of moving to, based upon what some of the early signs were, they're still going to have, the SEC has talked about still having 85 scholarship players and 20 walk-ons. Now,
Hmm.
those walk-ons may all have NIL deals that pay for their college.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they may not be the old walk-ons that it used to be, but so all of those number of roster limitations is what's going to be transpiring. But at any level, there's going to be 20 kids right now. Most schools, 20 kids, 20 fewer walk-on opportunities. So that number is going to go down. If you take that to all the different schools that have them, it's a lot of kids. And
Yeah.
again, it's the biggest impact is going to be felt by the seniors that are graduating this particular year
Hmm.
because this is a year where they really don't know what's going on yet. So it's all the chaos, all the waiting, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Well,
it's a
in
fun
these
period. And the reason I know so much about it is I've got a son that's
so who's
going
going through
through
the process
going
right
through all
now.
this. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
dealing with it real life.
Well, and having the two portal windows too. You have a December window, and I feel like if you took away the December window, maybe it opens up because of the uncertainty, maybe the college will take more high school kids, not knowing whether or not they're going to get a portal guy late spring or whatever it may be. But having two windows, I mean, it makes it almost impossible. Um, but yeah, no, it is. I know when I was at Vanderbilt, we had walk-ons that played legitimate minutes. And I sometimes question, I was like, how's this guy not on scholarship somewhere? Like he can really go, you know what I mean? One of the faster guys on our team, out of Dallas, walk on. I mean, super bright kid, got into Vanderbilt on his own, academic scholarship, all the he got all the stuff, but he loved football, was a good high school player, and was like, hey, I want to try it. He came out there and we were like, yeah, you're out here. Come on,
Yeah.
So
Well,
it'll be really sad to see that go away. I hope they find out a better solution than that, honestly.
well, as you know, I mean that he valued the education. I mean, Vanderbilt's one of those places that you go for football, but you go because it's a great school, and
Mhm.
you're telling people that you went to Vandy. I mean,
Right,
that's not like going to a smaller school, we'll say.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in that value of buying into the school is one of the other outcomes that are unintended, because you're looking at, like, Ohio State. It's all paid players. They're all mercenaries essentially, which is why they're not playing as cohesive. It's why I would submit to you that they're not playing as cohesive as a normal team would, because they're
Hmm.
not playing for Ohio State. They're
Hmm.
playing for themselves and their families, which is important, but it's they're not playing as a team. And whether you're at Vanderbilt or Samford or Ohio State, that is one of the other things that's missing in college football.
Yeah, I mean, chemistry is everything.
Oh,
And you can't fake chemistry. Chemistry comes organically, spending time with folks and going through the trenches with folks. And not to call anybody out, but Florida State is kind of seeing the repercussions of that. A
no question.
school of that magnitude, falling as quickly and as hard as they did. It's just you've got a bunch of transplants on the team. They don't know each other's middle name. They don't know if that guy's got a brother or a sister. I mean, those things matter. You got to spend time in the locker room with guys. You got to go out to dinner, go out to eat, and not just say, "Hey, I'm only here for a pit stop." And so there's got to be some red tape that gets put up here soon. If we want to save the current trajectory of college football. So I'm sure you've been keeping up with all the craziness of it this year. There's been a lot of parity, I guess you'd say. No one team feels like they're just standing out. What did you take from this season? And what are you looking forward to with bowl season and the playoff beginning?
Well, obviously the first year of the college football playoff going to 12 teams
Hmm.
was just a significant difference in how everybody looked at the season,
Hmm.
because everybody was kind of still in it. If this happens here, so I think there were a lot of positives there. I still think there's some room for tightening up how the selection process goes. And I think that's natural. I think you're going to have those growth periods, and they're growing into what those look like. And there's always, but like everybody said, whether it's 4 or 12, there are going to be people that are upset that are 13 and 14, or that were 5 and 6. I mean, there's always going to be fan bases that are like, you know, our team should be in based upon this, and somebody else saying our team should be in based upon that. So I think that part is, they'll clean some of that up, and but there'll always be that discussion going on.
Yeah.
I did One of my friends did have what I thought was a unique idea, um, that that's not in place, that I think I told him I was going to tell somebody at the SEC, but I hadn't done it yet, so I'm telling Yellowhammer News. Um, that they ought to put the first two out, 13 and 14. They ought to make them play or let them play each other in the bowl game.
Yeah.
Those two teams are automatically matched up in a bowl game somewhere. And this year it'd have been Alabama Miami. Well, that'd have been a great
Great
bowl
matchup.
game,
Yeah.
a great
Great
match.
bowl
I
game.
mean,
Yeah.
and the Alabama and the Miami folks have been, all right, Miami, we could play Alabama again, and Alabama's like, all right, let's go see if we can stop Cam Ward. I mean, it'd have been one of those games that everybody be talking about, because there's
Hmm.
so anyway, if you guys want to run with it, Yellowhammer News wants to run with that idea.
Well,
Feel free
we may steal that one from you. I'm not gonna
to.
lie. We may.
I'm giving it to you. It's all
Yeah.
yours.
I mean, and then you kind of bring back a little tradition too, and kind of the old school feel of ball, right? You bring up Alabama and Miami, two schools that have a lot of tradition and have a history of winning, putting them back there, seeing all the legends from Miami on their sideline and vice versa for Alabama. I mean, the stage would be set, the theatrics would be there, and I would be tuned in. That viewership would be just as high as some of these. Uh,
Oh,
I'm sure probably higher than Indiana Notre Dame or something like
oh,
that.
it's going to be higher than Penn State SMU, I can
Yeah.
assure you. I mean, there's no question. I
Uh-huh.
mean, in fact, the Miami game, I can't, don't have it in front of me. I don't know who they're playing in a bowl, but and of course Alabama, Michigan, those numbers are going to be higher than potentially higher than
Yeah.
the SMU Penn State game or some
Uh,
of the games like that.
no, I agree with you. I think that's a
Don't
great idea.
don't underestimate the number of Catholics across the country that are watching.
Yeah, that
They
is
may be,
true. Yeah,
maybe
that is very
hosting,
true.
watching.
And you know what? The whole state of Indiana may be watching that game too. So
Oh, no
they
doubt.
may be the other game.
I love that matchup. I mean, as a
Yeah.
college football guy,
Hmm.
and the fact of Indiana having the opportunity to play Notre Dame and have people think that they've got a chance to win. I
Yeah.
mean, 20 years ago, would you have thought, 5 years ago? I mean,
Oh,
but now,
basketball school didn't even, I mean, their
yeah,
football was an afterthought.
yeah, yeah. That's
So,
exactly.
it's, I think that's one thing about that's one positive of the portal, right? Is what happened with
Right.
Indiana and how quickly they were able to flip it around. And so that's great. But before we get out of here, you want to tell our audience just about times and dates as far as the new class coming up in the spring. And I'll have one more question for you after that. But just kind of give the audience a few more details about what's going on this spring.
Well, our banquet is May the 2nd and 3rd.
Hmm.
Tickets are available. We're already selling tickets. The event is at the Sheraton Birmingham Ballroom, so we have about 900 people coming every year. In addition to our class, we've announced two award winners already. Johnny Montgomery, who is the Frank Pig House Award winner, and then Buddy Dickinson, who's the Mel Allen Award winner. Those are two other members or two other honorees that we'll honor at the banquet. But it's a great event. Every year, CJ, we'll have somewhere between 40 and 50 inductees returning to the banquet.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of and they all come back. A lot of the locals come most every year when they can, but others will come back if they've got a teammate or somebody involved. So I anticipate with Mark Ingram being one of our inductees, we'll have several of the players coming and being a part and kind of supporting him. And of course, Coach Saban has not replied yet. That'd be a question I'm gonna get asked. I've actually already been asked that question.
Yeah.
But I have no idea if Coach Saban's coming or not. But it would
Mhm.
surprise me if he doesn't have anything on his calendar that he's not here. So it's a great event. It's a lot of fun. You get to again, and it's the reception's a public reception, so you get to meet these inductees at the event, and it's a fun time.
That's
Of
great.
course, you can go to our website, ASHOF, Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, ASHOF.org, and get all the information about the banquet in the coming weeks.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, last question for you today. Out of all the inductees, I'm assuming they all have an opportunity to speak post being inducted. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you have, over the years since 2009, do you have a favorite speech, induction speech, from one of the many special talents that come through the
Oh
Alabama
gosh.
Sports Hall of Fame?
There have been some remarkable speeches,
Hmm.
and then there have been some speeches. I'll tell you a couple quick stories about it, though. We tell everybody because we're unique in that we let everybody speak.
Hmm.
So 8 inductees, generally the distinguished sportsmen speak as well. So on a given night, it could be 10 people speaking. So we tell them all, you got 3 minutes.
Hmm.
You batch things together, put it together. You got 3 minutes to speak. Now we tell them that knowing that they're going to go over a little bit.
Hmm.
So we're thinking if we can hold them to 5 minutes, we're in great shape.
Hmm.
So I was Eli Gold, who was Alabama's voice for many years for college football. He was one of our inductees many years ago now, probably 10 years ago. And he came to me and he said, Scott, I've worked on my speech. I've got it at 3 minutes and 43 seconds, and I just can't cut anything else out. I said, Eli, that's fine. We tell you three, you're fine. You're going to be fine.
Hmm. Hmm.
We want you to stay under five. You're in great shape. He goes, all right, perfect. So I time every speech. So when they get up there and stop, I've got my iPhone. Boom, I hit go. In my 15 years, I've timed all of them. Eli came in at 3:42. He was a second off what he told me his time was going to be,
Wow.
which just kind of freaked me out a little bit. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
he said it was 3:43 and it's 3:42. Again, he understands time. He understands I've got so
yeah,
much to get this in and that. So
yeah.
he had a little bit of a head start.
Sounds like he was practicing in the bathroom. He had it right on.
Exactly right. Well, he had to cut it. He said, "Hey, I've cut it to 3:43." I'll tell you one story though that talking about inductees and we start off Saturday with an FCA breakfast, which is a great way to start it, and we're having some time together. And then I walk with the inductees about a 10-minute walk over to the Sheraton Ballroom where we will do a rehearsal, just kind of a walkthrough so they know where their family, we point out where their family is going to be seated, where they're going to be seated. And then we kind of go through the evening briefly, how you come up, you speak, that kind of thing. Again, it's about a 10-minute walk. Well, the year Robert Horry was inducted, Friday he comes in Friday for lunch. We have a media luncheon, then we have a VIP reception on Friday night, and then the FCA breakfast on Saturday morning. Well, he hadn't probably said three words the whole time. He just
Mhm.
doesn't. He's not outspoken, just
Yeah.
gregarious. He's just kind of laid back, reserved. So we're walking from the FCA breakfast to the ballroom again, about 10 minutes. And for some reason, we're talking about Malcolm Gladwell's book about outliers. And we were talking about the number of hours, 10,000 hours to be the best at whatever and type thing. We're talking, everybody's chipping in, and he hadn't said a word the whole walk. We get over there, we're about to walk into the ballroom, and he goes, I want to tell y'all something. And of course, everybody just is like E.F. Hutton. You may not remember that commercial, but everybody froze. Everybody solid quiet, and everybody's eyes turned to Robert.
Yeah.
He's going to say something. He goes, when I was flying out here, my son said, Dad, who's the best player that you ever played with? And he said, I looked at my son and I said, well, who do you think the best player is? And he goes, is it Shaq? And Robert said, I told him no. And he said, well, is it Tim? Tim Duncan from when his
Mhm.
time was Spur.
Mhm.
He goes, no. He goes, is it Hakeem from the
He's
Elijah one?
still, yeah,
He goes, I looked at my son. I said, man, you just like the bigs.
yeah, yeah.
And he goes, but I told my son the best player I ever played with was Kobe Bryant.
Mhm.
And he said, during my time with the Lakers, Kobe Bryant was the first person on the practice court every practice, and the last one to leave the court every practice. And if you'll remember, during that time when Robert played for the Lakers, Kobe Bryant was arguably the best player in the world. It was post Jordan,
Mhm.
pre LeBron. So
Yes,
Kobe was,
he was the guy. He was the
it
face of
was
the
he was
league.
the
Yeah.
he was the guy, and he was the first person on the practice court and the last to leave every day.
Wow.
I mean, so that's a lesson and I share that lesson with kids today. They don't be the last one walking into practice.
Hmm.
If you are, stay and show some leadership and run a couple extra sprints just because. Hey, I
Yes.
was late. I need to add a little more. If you get caught, there are reasons to be late sometimes. Very
Hmm.
rare, make it rare, but it does happen.
Hmm.
Make up for it, but just don't be late. Be 5 minutes early and
Yeah.
all that. I mean, be that guy that's setting the tone for the rest of them. So,
That's the Mamba mentality that they talk about.
yeah.
It's never being satisfied. The job's not done. He had the famous quote. I think they were up 3-1 or something on Boston, and they were like, why aren't you smiling? He said, job's not done. Job's not finished, and he was just throughout his career, you could see that spill out on the court. And I think there's even a picture or a meme of him where he had I think they may have been in Miami or something, and I guess he missed a couple free throws. I think he still had 30 points or something, but he missed a couple free throws, and the team had already left, and I guess he was going to meet them at the airport or whatever, but you could see him in the gym still shooting free throws after a game.
Mm.
Um, that's the time for you to kind of decompress and wait till you get home to do. He's on the away team's court getting free throws up just because it means that much to him. So that's just another level of commitment. But Scott, I thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time this morning. I know you're a busy guy, and but we love to have you here on Yellowhammer News. And please feel free to come back at any point in time. There will be a lot to talk about going into the spring, whether that's college football, you all's ceremony, and like you said, the portal and the coaching changes. None of that stops. It's a year-round thing now. So we'd love to have you back, and we want to thank our audience for tuning in once again. You can find us on all social platforms at Yellowhammer News. We will be back very, very soon. We hope everyone has a happy holidays, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, CJ.
Of
Appreciate you.
course. Uh-huh.